Good morning. My name is Andrew Smart. I'm an account manager at Aston, and I'm delighted to host today's session. Welcome to our webinar about Spotlight, Aston's iShare add-on that creates professional, clear, and intuitive maps in minutes. As part of today's session, Andy Bailey, Aston's senior GIS consultant, will provide an introduction to Spotlight, show you its purpose, its benefits, and the ease in which it can be used. So that's enough from me for now. I'm going to hand over to Andy Bailey for today's session on Spotlight.
Thanks, Andrew. You all can see my screen, I hope. So thanks for attending. This session is all about Aston's iShare Spotlight, which is, in brief, it's a map construction kit that's online. It's a single page that will interact with an iShare map installation, and you'll be able to select layers, get them presented with just a few clicks, and very simply create a map that is then suitable for embedding in a web page. So it is foolproof. That's why they've given it to me to demonstrate today. Some things about it really, sort of the division of effort in building these for UK councils, which are sort of the majority of Aston's customers. The division of labour is really the iShare administrator would configure a map source in their iShare Maps installation. So that would be controlling what layers are present, the styling, and obviously where that data comes from. And if a user does an info click on a feature, what are the attributes are going to be displayed as a result of that. The Spotlight creator chooses what map source they're going to use, what layers they are going to present, be displayed. And they've got various controls about the sort of the interaction of the map that we'll go through in a few examples. But it's very easy, and they can also adjust the map size, the height and width as well, and then export that and put it into a council's web page. So it should sit very nicely alongside an iShare Maps installation, you know, the kind of My House, My Nearest and My Maps kind of application. It will be embedded in various pages alongside that. Who is it available for? Well, it's available for anyone with iShare Maps within enterprise or public agreements, which I'm pretty sure I would have thought all our customers fit into that category. The Spotlight code itself is centrally hosted, which is good for us and good for you, because if there are any improvements that we can put in or any bug fixes, those are all addressed through a test program and then applied directly to that central service. So there's no updates that you need to apply to any iShare Maps installation itself. What are the purposes for Spotlight? It does provide a very sort of simple map. You can search for addresses on it and click on layers and turn layers on and off. The kind of messaging that we feel that it's appropriate for is very much a single story kind of thing. So a local plan is a good example. We've got lots of people using it for local plans where you might have something like 30 layers. The iShare administrator is controlling the styling and the layers and the data, and all those layers can be displayed within a single map that can be embedded wherever you like. The other great use for it is where you have a list of facilities, whether that be schools or contact centres, recycling centres, that kind of thing, where you've got a list of facilities and the user would probably benefit from having a map there showing that single layer where all those facilities reside in your area. When you go to have a think about where you can make use of Spotlight, have a look on your council's website. The type of things we're looking for are where current embedded maps already exist. So you might have a Google Maps or leaflet, and those two maps can be replaced very easily with a Spotlight map. Also, the idea always being with Aston is that having these kind of interactive maps is an opportunity to channel shift away from call center queries and make that information that is available online enhanced. The people that are using Spotlight, we've had it going for about 4 years now, I think. And this is a graph showing the total number of Spotlight requests. So this would be someone accessing a page with Spotlight on it. So when they pan around, that's not an additional request. It's just when they load up that page. And you can see here we are at the moment sort of circling around the 60,000 per month visits using Spotlight. So it's a good number, but we would like to improve upon that. And if you if I go down to the next graph, you'll see that on the left-hand side, we've got individual customers of Aston. We've got one very busy customer that's almost hitting 500,000 uses of Spotlight since they got working with it. There's about 6 or 7 that have really good numbers, but there's an awful lot of customers that haven't really tried it out or passed the information over to their web team properly. So we'll be really keen for that kind of communication to occur, and we'll be very happy to talk to any web team that we can assist in them making use of it. On the right hand side, the colouring of this one is actually tracking the map sources that we see in the requests. A lot of people are using, and no criticism, that they're using their default map source. So we see that quite a lot, but we can't really tell from this perspective what layers they're using in that. But there are other map sources mentioned. There's things like flood risk management, highways, planning policy, and probably the general map sources are the ones that contain the facility locations, such as schools and libraries and that kind of thing. So those are hopefully they're useful ideas for you guys on making use of Spotlight. I'm going to run through some examples in the session of how easy it is to create Spotlight maps. The URL for Spotlight is at the top there. So that's one that you can try it yourselves after the session. There's also some documentation online iShare help material. So if you search for Spotlight on there, you'll find plenty of information, including this URL, and then you can plug in your iShare Maps URL into the interface, and then it will query that and it will display all the map sources and the layers that you have available to play with. It's worth noting that if you're going to make use of it, it will accept an iShare URL parameter. So this one here has maps.epsom-ul.gov.uk. So every time you click on that, that's the iShare Maps installation that it will load up with. Otherwise, it will load up with our demo server, which is maps.demo.aston. So it's well worth perhaps setting that as a favorite with the iShare URL parameter already configured, and then that's one that you can pass to the web team, and then they can create maps having minimal interaction with the GIS team if the layers are present and if the styling and the attributes are all suitable. So let's get underway. We're going to start with a kind of single location example of Spotlight. So this would be a very common one. Everyone's got this, where you've got a contact page on a council's website. And what we're going to do, here's my fictitious contact page. I've got some blurbs, some opening times, and I've got an address area with telephone numbers and emails, all that kind of standard fare. And it'd be really useful if I had a map on there, and it doesn't have to be grand, probably quite a small map. And I'm just going to show you how we can insert one very, very easily. So this is Spotlight as you would load it up. Here I haven't got the iShare URL parameter, so it's defaulted to the maps.demo server that we run. On the left-hand side, you've got at the top, you've got various map controls that I'll go through. Got a map size here, so we can adjust it. We can make it wider. And in this case, I'm going to make it a bit shorter. Down the bottom, we've got a map content area. This is where your map sources are listed. So you might have your general maps source listed at the top. I've got one called Spotlight. I recommend customers doing this kind of thing to have a Spotlight one, or perhaps call it API. So you know that this map source is used for embedded maps or for any kind of API activity that the web team might want to make use of. So you kind of know that's the map source that they're using, and it's used for through them. So if I select Spotlight as my map source, you'll see hopefully that the bottom left-hand side where we've got layers, that's just been updated with the layers that are available. And I've got one called Council Facilities as a group, so I can flick both of those on. I'm really zoomed out at the moment, so I can use the zoom controls, or I can hold down Shift and do bounding box. And that feels kind of appropriate for where the town hall is. So people that know Epsom, this is the town centre, and they should be able to find their way there. Now, at the top, we've got control of this layer control. Now, for this purpose, I don't really need the layer control. I'm just indicating the location of one facility. So in actual fact, I'm going to turn that off. So I've just got my map icon. In this case, because the map is really just for where's this town hall, I'm going to turn off the address search as well. And in fact, the info pop-up can go as well. And in fact, once I've done this next section, we can turn the layer off as well. We can add a little map pin to our map, and we can either place it at the center where it's already placed, or we can click on the map and just move it slightly to wherever we want, and the map updates. And I've also got an information panel, which I'll select. And this just gives us a little title that we can edit. So as soon as I click away from that, it'll update. And at this point, I'm thinking, well, actually, I don't need that town hall layer on at all. So I'll turn that off. That really is just enough. So we have, to be honest, no layers at this point, just the boundary if they were to zoom out. But it's enough of a map to demonstrate where the town hall is. I think it's good to go, at which point I come up to the top here and I've got an export map button. And if I select that, I'm presented with an HTML element, an iframe element. That's the bit that I want to copy and embed into my page. Down the bottom is a URL with the same map that you could paste into a document if you wanted, and people can click on that. And what it will do, if I was to load it up into a new tab, you'll see that it's using the whole full screen. It's not restricted by the height setting or the width setting that I've placed upon it, but it does have all the other details. And yeah, that's just sort of sharing through emails and that kind of thing. But it gives you a preview of the map. It's the iframe is what I want. So I will copy that back onto my contact page. Now I'm just going to pretend that I'm on the server. So we're just going to edit the HTML here. And I'm going to place it below this postcode. So if I went to inspect and then edit, I can then paste in my iframe, click away. And that's what the page would now look like if I was doing it for real. So the map is interactive. I would be able to click on it if there was a layer present. And essentially it's now in a sort of ready state to be published. So really nice and quick. Let me take you through two more examples. So over here, the next one we're going to use is conservation areas page. This has a list of conservation areas, very standard fare. In each case, we have a link to a PDF map that's been generated and then an appraisals document. So each one is separate, and the list goes on. But what would be really nice would be an interactive map at the top. So we're going to work on that. Now for this one, I'm going to query Epsom's iShare Maps installation. So over here, we've got the URL. In fact, I've got it up here, you can see. So every time I load up this site, we are querying the Epsom's iShare Maps. Now their map sources, the one I'm after is one called planning. I'm going to select that. For those familiar with iShare administration, you'll see that some layers have been configured to be loaded by default. I can just turn those off. And we've got a few here. The conservation area is the one I want, but I'm just going to uncheck the group and then switch on conservation areas. Going to make my map a bit wider and then zoom in to the area of interest. That's probably good enough. And this time I'll leave my layer control on, only because they're using some classification between the different types of conservation areas they've got. So it's useful for that. And that's it, I'm done. Come in here, grab the iframe, go back to my conservations page, and again, drop it in. And there's our interactive map. So hopefully that didn't take too long and there wasn't that many clicks involved. The next one I'm going to do is remarkably similar, to be honest, but it does have a few more layers. We've got a kind of get outdoors map that incorporates a number of different things. So there might be a few facilities such as leisure centres, but there's also open spaces, parks, green spaces, woods you might put in there, that kind of thing. So it's more of a catch-all kind of spotlight map is the one I'm after, with a good number of different layers. I'm going to again use Epsom's one. I'll just reload it. And this time I'm going to a different map source of layers. I'm using the open space one. If I scroll down, we can see that they've got amenity green spaces, which I'm going to uncheck. But I do want parks and gardens, recreation grounds, and I think under countryside, they've got parks and open spaces and sport facilities. You'll notice that they've happened to chosen the mono, the grayscale mapping, which I think really suits it in this case. Looks rather nice. I'll just move that there. I'll also cover the full screen once. We'll switch that on as well. That provides this icon down here that will just make the map full screen. So I'm happy with that. I can do export map. And again, copy my iframe element, come over here, inspect. I have cheated a little bit by creating a table. I just want to put it in there. And then bring that list of features up to just align that a bit better. I've made my map a little bit wider than I intended, but you get the point. That now includes layers that will hopefully cover, whatever I've mentioned on the left-hand side. So it's hopefully you're convinced that it's really straightforward to build a map super quick and insert it into a web page. Obviously, the web pages need to be saved on the server wherever they're hosted, but those can be hosted anywhere. It doesn't have to be on the council's website. If you are hosting elsewhere, we do have to make an adjustment on the iShare Maps server. The way that Spotlight works is through a cross-origin resource sharing. So we have to tell the iShare Maps server what websites are allowed to interact with it from a server perspective. So it's the domains that we have to list. So it is a straightforward configuration change, but that's where you would have your council's website is mentioned, or council domain is mentioned in that particular config. But once you're done, then you can embed Spotlight Maps within the council's website quite freely. I haven't demonstrated the address searching, so let me just have a quick look at that. I forgot to do that. You can see that will zoom in, and I do get a house icon. Now the styling of Spotlight Maps cannot be configured, cannot be customized. So we've kept the styling to a very sort of plain vanilla generic styling that we hope is sort of presentable. But if you did want anything particular beyond that, we are looking at ways of developing Spotlight further for that. But in the meantime, you can make use of other embedded maps that we offer. Hopefully you've got enough information to go away and have some fun with Spotlight. Do check that if you want the URL, have a look at the iShare help and search for Spotlight on there and you'll find it. You're obviously going to try and put in your iShare Maps URL into it. If it doesn't work, do raise a support ticket with us. It may be because it needs a particular module in IIS that needs to be installed, but that is a straightforward procedure. And once it's done, then you can pass that URL to the web team or whoever else needs to make some maps, and they should be all set to go. If your iShare Maps isn't configured yet and you still want to have a play, you can make use of our demo site. I've got an example here of Cambridge. Thanks, Tom. You can make use of anyone else's iShare Maps installation just by changing the URL that it uses. So do have a play. I hope it's enjoyable. You can't break anything using Spotlight, which is probably worth communicating to the web team if you're sharing the URL, because it looks like you are creating something. Well, indeed you are, but you're doing it with gloves on, so it's nothing can be broken. Right, well that sort of completes the run through of how it all works. I can hand back to Andrew now, who I think is going to run through some questions and answers.
Yeah, that's right. Thanks, Andy, and thanks very much for that presentation. Really good to see the benefits and, more importantly, I guess, the ease of using Spotlight. Andy's quite right. We've got a few minutes left, so we're going to jump straight into a Q&A. We've got a list of questions that have been emailed over in advance, so I'll start with those. If any of you do have any questions, any of the attendees today, please pop them into chat over the next few minutes, and I will try to cover those as well. So the first one we had via email, Andy, was what base maps can I have and how do I change them?
That's a good question. If you have an iShare map source that you've created for this purpose, you can control the base maps that are available to that, just like any other map source. So things like the OS Maps API will work, and you might have aerial in there as well. So it behaves just like any other map source. In mention of the OS Maps API, Spotlight at the moment doesn't support the WMTS base mapping that some customers are probably using by now. We'll be rolling out a new release of Spotlight later in the year, after July, I believe, that will support WMTS base mapping. So the OS Maps API one is one that would fit under that. But you can still make use of OS Maps API by making use of the WMS URL for those map sources.
Brilliant, thanks for that, Andy. Next question we've got is, can I use hyperlinks to jump to web pages? For example, could we publish a planning policy map or local plan, then click to read detailed policy information?
You sure can. Yes, if I share my screen again. So I think these conservation areas actually have hyperlinks, and if I was to click on that, that would open up to a new tab. So that's probably what people want. We do have some nice examples of kind of local plan activity. Stockton have a economic growth plan Spotlight, and that's just loading up with lots and lots of layers. So hopefully that demonstrates that these type of things can be done, and you can have a separate hyperlink on each attribute for each layer, obviously. So that's configured in exactly the same way for iShare Maps behaves in its normal fashion.
Brilliant, thanks, Andy. And then the last question for now, can you show the link between map source in iShare Studio and map source used in Spotlight?
I wonder what they mean. There is no difference, in all honesty. So it is another map source that fits under the My Maps group of map sources. So My House, My Nearest behave a little bit differently, but the Spotlight map source would just sit in and behave just like the others. Probably the differences you might want to apply for map sources that are used by OL iShare in general are things like switching on or configuring those layers to return things like find nearest, like I did with the primary schools at the end, where you have to configure that layer to return X number of features for a given radius. But that is all that there is to it.
Okay, so David's just expanded on that slightly, or at least his interpretation of the question, and he's asking if you would be able to open Studio and show the map source. then show how these same layers, base map layers, are brought into Spotlight.
He wants me to log into Studio. All right. It's a good thing I got that open, actually. Here we are. Can you see my remote desktop?
Yes, we can.
Oh,
Yeah.
good. Cool, cool. So this is the Studio for our demo server. So we've got a number of map sources, but down here we've got one for Spotlight. I can't remember. Here we are. I was showing off this layer. And the base map that I'm using happens to be this one down here. If I just click down here, you can see that it's using a WMS URL. It's worth pointing out that the layers that Spotlight support officially are OGC layers. I think we just call them layers now, rather than classic layers, which a lot of our customers may still be using. Certainly if they're on iShare 5 and they're using a map source that is used for My House and My Nearest, they have to be at the moment classic layers. Now Spotlight will support classic layers, but you might need to do a little bit of tweaking to the mapserver.map file. There's just a few more additional parameters that need to be included in that. But that's a good reason why to create a separate map source away from your regular ones and just create OGC layers, knowing full well that they are going to work out of the box.
Brilliant. Thanks, Andy. Thanks to all of the attendees. We appreciate you taking the time to join us today. Hope you found the session valuable, and we look forward to seeing you at future events. Thanks very much.